I'd like to take a moment to talk to you about academia, why I think it's important, and what I'm going to do, however, is start out talking about sort of the dark side of academia and what the problems are with it, maybe a little bit about how, at least from my perspective, it used to work, and give you a thesis on why it's broken now. And then we'll sort of jump into the useful aspects of it, and we'll see, why having it destroyed is really not good for us. So what happened was I met up with somebody that I know and had a conversation with them. They have a PhD, right? And I've known lots of PhDs. I grew up in Boston. I used to hang out at MIT and Harvard and Northeastern and Boston University, right? Like I'm quite familiar with research scientists. I worked in pharma. I worked for research labs. I've been all over. I've talked to a lot of these people. I have family members that have PhDs. This is not an unusual thing, for me to be acquainted with. So I was talking to this person, and the way they were talking about the world was very strange to me. And I was kind of puzzled. I'm like, what's going on here, So I'm having a kind of normal conversation, sort of strayed into the political. I mean, not really, but also covered sort of the political. And it occurred to me that the way they were talking about the world was very egocentric, like amazingly egocentric. But that was sort of hidden by this blanket of care for others. Now, the interesting thing about this is the others in this case are not people that are nearby or people that they know or people that they will ever know. It was people in the abstract. And I sort of started to realize, you're speaking it as though people are abstractions, and that the more abstract they are, the further away from you they are, the further away from your experience they are, the more important they are. It's almost as if you value abstractions over actual interactions with, humans, like the one in front of you who's getting perturbed at the way you're talking and trying to understand, why are you talking about that when this thing that's more important and closer to you is right here to be talked about? Interesting. And then I thought back to previous conversations with this person, and I realized immediately that, the way they talk about the world is no one can do X, and where the X is something that other people do all the time. It just, they couldn't do X. And I was like, why would you say no one can do something that people are doing all the time? That's very strange. Or worse yet, the person in front of you has done. Like, that's really weird. Like, well, no, I mean, I did that. And they're like, well, no one can do that. How did you do it? And it's like, I don't know. I just did it. Why can't you do it? That's the better question, right? And they don't have an answer to questions like this, which sort of indicates that everyone is them. If they can't do something, no one else can do it. That's just the way they think. And I think it's really subtle, so people miss it because of the apparent empathy that they show. But that empathy, empathy is inappropriate unless you're a mother with a child under the age of 4 or 5. Empathy is not possible, right? You can't adopt the emotional state of another human being and understand things from their perspective. That would mean you are not only yourself, but also fully embodying that other person. That would be quite a feat indeed. Unless you're dealing with an underdeveloped human, we usually call those children, I don't think that's possible. So outside of a mother, because women tend to do this better than men on average, maybe not only women or only ever a woman or something, and maybe not all women, that's fine too. But generally speaking, women can do that towards their children under a certain age, and maybe other children under a certain age because they're undeveloped humans. But you can't do that with an adult. That doesn't make any sense. And so when they start talking about other people, those people tend to be far away, and they tend to express something that they identify as empathy towards those people. Well, don't you care about blah, blah, blah with this person, right? And those things will typically be around access and education. And if you examine the lives of these people, what you'll often find is that those are things that they lacked in their own life. Now, I'm quite certain this isn't a coincidence, but if you want to chalk it up to coincidence, you can do that. I don't really mind. So I think the important thing here is to realize that a lot of academics, particularly the ones that will pursue PhDs, have this problem. They appear empathetic because they speak in the abstract about people that are far away from that they'll probably never meet, fondly and with care, or apparent care, but without an understanding of their needs, of course, because they're abstractions and you don't actually know what an abstract person needs. You only know what a person that you actually interact with needs, maybe, right, if you're lucky. So it's a false sort of care. It's a false sense of empathy. It's a false sense of concerning yourself with others. We'll say over yourself. I mean, you're at a university with a PhD after all. So, you already have a certain privilege. It's ironic that they're the ones that talk about privilege. They're the ones that have privilege. And in the old days, academia was called the ivory tower. And you can see that as a purely negative thing. But actually, I think the reason why it's an ivory tower is because you want to keep those people safe and away from the rest of the people. I mean that technically. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean about it. You can interpret it that way if you want, but like that's on you. Like some people are delicate and they can't handle the world. And if they had to interact with real humans in the real world, like they had to volunteer at a homeless shelter or something, they would break down and they would be non-functional. And I know people like this. I know people who have tried. I've seen them. It's very difficult for them. And we still need to make use of them. And if they can't serve soup in a soup kitchen, fair enough. We got to give them something to do. And so we lock them away in the ivory tower, away from the sort of grittiness of everyday life for their own protection, but also for the protection of everybody else, because they tend to have fanciful ideas about how the world works and what would be better for the world. And so this benefits both sides. So there's a reason for an ivory tower, and it's not a negative reason at all. It's quite a positive reason. And it's important, right? It's an important thing to have an ivory tower, to keep these delicate people away from, the harsher world that they can't handle, and also give them something useful to do where they can contribute to society in a way that otherwise they would be unable to do. So I guess the good side of academia is they can think in abstractions, and they're very good at that. So they, to some extent, can think at the group layer. They can consider things in ways that less abstract thinkers cannot. And that's very useful. The problem is those people shouldn't be leading anything because they can't make good leaders. Like, it's not possible. Anti-pragmatism does not make for good leaders. Things that are not pragmatic are not good for people as persons, right? They might be good for people in the abstract, for groups of peoples, right? But they're not good for persons as such. And so you have to be careful about how you modify their ideas and implement them, or if they even have good ideas, because, I mean, classically, just historically, most academics, their ideas suck and they never go anywhere. And some academics have good ideas, but they get squashed, usually by the ivory tower itself. Now, I think the reason why we're having a problem with academia in general, and sort of the breakdown in the trust of experts and institutions, which is kind of everywhere now, sort of hard to deny at this point, everyone's talking about it, is because they broke down their own gates. They somehow enchanted themselves into believing in equality, in that abstraction of equal that can't apply to a person. It can only apply to persons. In other words, you can't be given equal work, but you can be given equal opportunity. Opportunity is an abstraction. Work is a specific. Work is still some kind of abstraction, but not like opportunity. Opportunity is more like a second order abstraction. Work's more like a first order abstraction. Work is something that hopefully everybody has to do, whereas opportunity is a potential. And so maybe you blow your opportunity. Maybe that opportunity is given to you, but you can't handle it. Maybe that opportunity never arises, but for your lack of vision, not for the lack of the opportunity. There's lots of interactions with opportunity that aren't available at the level of work. So when you sort of flatten the world, if you're, say, a liberal, for example, you can refer to my video here about that. You can fool yourself into an equality doctrine. And there's many such doctrines, but they're all based in liberalism, or at least individualism. And they're all wrong, by the way, because it's just a flat version of the world. You want to give people the opportunity. You see that you have privilege, and you want to open up the doors or the gateways to privilege for everybody. And you also see some of your peers, their ideas, which are very, very good ideas, because you engage with them, and you're wicked smart. So definitely true. They didn't get a fair shake in the halls of academia. So you want to throw open the gates. You want to make everything more equal for people and get more good ideas in there, because good ideas, at least for you, has equated to a good life. And you want that good life for everybody because you deal in abstractions and not in persons. So I think what happened is they opened up the gates of academia rather explicitly, and they used government money to do it in the US, right? Like, oh, let's guarantee college loans for everybody and give everybody a college degree, or try to. And when you do that, of course, a lot of things happen. Supply demand changes. You water down the value of the degrees that you're giving. If you're willing to give degrees to people rather than make them earn those degrees, which are two very different things, by the way. Back in the day, you had to earn your degree. You no longer have to do that. It's just a piece of paper that you buy. That's why you can buy them online, by the way. People noticed the correspondence, and they said, well, these colleges are just taking the long route to just selling somebody a piece of paper. So the whole rise of certifications in the computer industry is based on this principle. Not that there's nothing to certifications, but also they're following a pattern, right? Which is anybody can just get a certification. You just attend the courses, take the tests, take tests as many times as you need. Once you pass it, you get the certification. I don't know what that signifies other than the fact that you paid money, but colleges were doing the same thing and universities were doing the same thing. And so I can hardly blame people for doing certifications when they were just following the larger pattern of academia. But academia had thrown open the doors and was willing to just sell papers, not filter people. The proper role of academia is to filter people, to say, these people, their hard work and their ideas are valuable in combination. And so we're going to give them a safe place to be and do that work unencumbered by other considerations. Now, one of the problems when you flood something with money is you get a bunch of parasites and leeches trying to get their hands on that money. The nice thing about academia in the past was academia was for a certain class of people, the people with money. Now, it wasn't only for those people. Other people got sent to university who will say couldn't afford it. Either the community or the family or the church would pull together some money, recognizing that person's talent, or at least their need to be away from the rest of society for their own good, maybe the good of society, maybe both. Wouldn't that be weird? But it happens. And they would send people to college or university, to academia. That happened. That happened recently. Geniuses like Tesla were in that situation. The noble class used to just pluck people out, adopt them, and bring them in, right? That happened all the time in feudal Europe in particular, but like well past that, up until extremely recently. And the scholarship is modeled off that. But it's not the same, because in the old days, it was a group of people making an effort because they saw something. And, that's a better form of distributed cognition than fill out these forms, apply for the scholarship, and write an essay. That can be gamed. And we're living in a video game world, so people figure out how to game that. That's a bad system. But the system of having a group of people get together, put their time, energy, and attention, pool their resources, and send somebody off, or get them noticed by a nobleman or something who will pluck them up, or a wealthy family, whatever. That's a much better system. We've lost that system. That's unfortunate. It's not entirely gone, but it's mostly gone. And that's really unfortunate. Some scholarships, by the way, do work more like that, and those are better scholarships. I shouldn't have to say that, but I feel like I do. But academia has lost all of these things, and academia has thrown open its own gates, watered down the value of the paper that it gives out to people, and focused on trying to give people better lives instead of trying to signal who's of what kind of value. That's two things. Who these people are, what kind of value they offer. Because academia never cranked out cookie cutter people, right? Some people were really good at research. Some people were really good at discovery, which is not the same as research. I've seen researchers in the lab having things happen that should have turned into discoveries, but didn't. They got frustrated, they got upset, they didn't learn, they didn't say, wait a minute, like Rutherford did with the atom. This isn't what I expected. This is interesting though. Maybe I'll pursue this for a minute and figure out what it means. No, they just, my experiment didn't go well. I'm out of here. Opportunity for discovery lost, right? And most of those probably don't end in discovery, but also certain people can make discoveries and certain people can't. Certain people can only get frustrated when things don't go their way. You've met those people, don't worry. Think about it. So these are important distinctions. What are they good for? And who are they? And what are we protecting them from? And what sorts of advice of theirs should we listen to? Well, I don't know anymore because they've watered down academia so much. And when somebody says, I have a PhD and blah, 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 not only does my brain shut off, but I know one thing I'm not going to listen to them about. It's whatever topic they have a PhD in. Sorry, guys, but you did that to yourselves. And the real problem is that in many cases, and again, I've met many, many, many PhDs, I know way more about their field than they do. That's scary because I didn't go to college. So why would that be true? How much work did you do on the topic? To be fair, I've read thousands of white papers on all kinds of topics because I'm a very curious person. I don't mind reading white papers so much, even though I'm highly dyslexic and it is painful to read. I do it, right? I do it when I'm curious, when I want to learn something. And I've had conversations with PhDs. Old school PhDs, guys who were old when I was young and who had grown up in an academia that you couldn't stay in academia if you didn't belong there. And belonging there meant something. Nowadays, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything at all. And that's too bad. Now, I still know a few PhDs. I know a few real geniuses of PhDs, and they're awesome. And I would absolutely listen to advice that they have in certain topics. Now, they tend to stray from those topics quite a bit and explain things to me when they're totally wrong about them, which is very much too bad. But that is also a side effect of being in academia to some extent, is because people expect you to give an answer and sound smart or erudite on a topic, you tend to fall into that pattern and try to sound smart on all topics. And maybe on average, a good academic is smarter on all topics than your average person. That's quite possibly true, but it's not true enough to be useful. They come off sounding arrogant. Some people would use the word condescending, make condescension great again. Condescension is really important. If somebody with a PhD condescends to you, be grateful because that means they don't sound arrogant. They're actually trying to bring things into your language, right? They're bringing their language down, their concepts down to you. That's a good thing, right? They're not being arrogant. Someone who's being arrogant is sort of assuming that you have access to all these words and assuming that you won't notice if they make a small transgression in the name of communication. For example, I don't like that. I'd like somebody to tell me, well, I'm going to simplify this for you. That's fine, as long as you tell me first. Don't simplify it for me and pretend like you said something smart though, because that's not gonna go well with me. I'm not gonna be happy about that, right? And not everybody can do that. And that's good to recognize too. Like, we need these academics because they can do the things that they can do and they do them well when they're good. The problem now is we've had such a flood of people that it's not good. And that has hurt academia because they've lost credibility. But it's also hurt them because they've let a bunch of people in who aren't smart enough to follow the principles of academia. They aren't respectful of academia because they didn't earn it. They got it given to them in some way. And now we have a problem because not only do they make the other academics look bad, but a lot of them enter into academia as such. They write bad papers. They get into the heads of the administration. They get into the heads of politicians. So now we have these whole movements around ridiculous, quote, disciplines, which are not disciplines, sciences, which are not sciences, ways of researching, which are not valid ways of researching, that have entered the political discourse and the social discourse. Now, that never used to happen. What happened in academia stayed in academia. It's a lot like Las Vegas, right? Like those people were off doing their thing and no one knew what it was and no one really cared. And it would affect us occasionally and we get something cool like a nuclear plant. That's awesome. Nuclear plants are awesome. I love nuclear plants, right? Or we'd get some neat new form of medicine that came out of the lab, or a nice new drug that, cures some disease. That's fantastic. That's my interaction with academia. I want academia to inform, not the political discourse ever, because no, but I want them to inform basically the businesses as to which directions to go in. And I want the businesses to help academia to flourish. Now, we've lost all those relationships, mainly because the thing that was sort of guiding that is gone. The guiding principles behind all this is gone. Hierarchy has been erased, or at least severely damaged. Can't really get rid of it, of course. It will always reappear. It'll just do so chaotically if you don't hold it up, revivify it, sort of honor it. And I think that's what happened to academia. It didn't honor itself. You open the gates, the barbarians come flooding in, and they wreck the place. That was basically what happened. I mean, I hate to, bring it down to the banal, basic, simple case, but also it's a really good way to understand what happened to academia. And it's sort of obvious to me as somebody who, I used to interface with really smart people at MIT who are actual geniuses who actually invented stuff. And, I knew people who had 20 patents by the time they were freaking 22 years old, ridiculously smart people. And it was wonderful to talk to them. They were also very disconnected from the world and they couldn't fix a car. I can fix cars, a little weird. I could sail boats. They didn't even like to be on the water. I don't know what's wrong with people who don't like to be on the water. I love to be on the water. All these things, there's lots of little things, right? But they're not little. It's not like I was like, oh, you don't know how to fix a car. Who the hell are you? No. It wasn't that at all. It was, oh, well, that's your place. This is my place. And maybe you have more than one place. That's fine. And there are academics who they can fix cars. In fact, they're rather good at it. There's a whole show out of MIT called Car Talk. Those guys are MIT guys. They used to talk about cars. They were quite good at it too. I used to listen to some of their programs. They were quite good. Some academics are really good at presenting information. And some academics give very boring lectures and no one wants to listen to them. These things happen. It doesn't even make them bad teachers necessarily. You can learn a lot from a boring lecture. You can learn a heck of a lot, in fact. So these things are important. But when you destroy them, and we have destroyed them, and putting more money into the system certainly made it worse. There's no question about that. And these are the sorts of people that say, money corrupts. Well, why did you take the money? I don't understand. If you think money corrupts, why would you accept the money? It's good to explore, we'll say, from a psychological, even though I hate psychology, perspective. There's something going on there. Why did academia destroy itself? But I'm going to say my thesis is they destroyed themselves. And that hurts everybody for sure. I am not sort of cheery about this and dancing on their grave. I think it's horrible. But also, I'm not going to lament their decision. You did that to yourself. I don't know what to tell you. You shouldn't have done that to yourself. So I just wanted to get that out there. I wanted to see how that meets with people. I know I tweeted out a short form version of this thesis to Jordan Peterson because he hasn't gotten back to me any day now, I'm sure. I'm sure it's an oversight. But I think it's an important thesis to engage with. What happened to academia and why did it happen that way? And let's not put it in abstract ideological terms. Not that I think those are invalid descriptions of what happened. I think they're valid descriptions of what happened. But what allowed the ideologies that were always there? It's not like Marxism is a new idea or neo-Marxism is all that new or any of this stuff. So why did it get in academia now? What changed? That's the better question from my perspective. And that's my thesis. And I hope you find it helpful. I found it helpful when I sort of realized that. And like, I mean, I was just having this conversation, and it was weird too, because what happened to me in the conversation was I remembered that I knew all this. I remembered, oh yeah, academics are like this. This is how they are. This is how proper academics are. And I had just been so far out of that game, if you will. I moved out of Boston. And before that, I had stopped. I mean, when I was young, I used to spend, I don't know, 5 nights a week at Harvard Square, like literally just hanging out. I used to wander the halls of MIT and pop in on some of the research labs. I worked for Polaroid. They had research labs in and around MIT. Like, I talked to their scientists. They were basically academics trapped in a building near their school so that they could quietly do their work and not be bothered by the marketing team, which, to be fair, was a couple blocks away, actually, in very fancy skyscrapers, or by the factory workers that were actually like making film or making cameras, assembling them, or the management people, right? They were off in their own little buildings in the mini academia that some companies, large companies in particular, used to have. And of course, we've lost that too. This is all worth thinking about, because when we're tying in the loss of academia and the loss of other things in society, which I think is entirely appropriate, I don't think it's academia's fault in that way. I think there's something else going on. Academia fell victim to it and opened their gates. But there's something else going on, and we might want to look at that. We might want to look at that sort of one layer up the hierarchy, if you will. And again, I hope you found this helpful. Let Jordan Peterson know. Maybe he'll respond to my video instead of my tweet. Either one will do, though. I'm not picky. And thank you very much for your time and attention.